just inside the capsule. So it's generally just easier. It's also because they can then begin the process of hatch closure and then get suited up, where if they got suited up outside the capsule, there's not as much room getting in. Listen in.
Go ahead, Tess.
You are go for your recommended cleaning. Just want to call your attention to the specific brush tool labeled for hatch seal cleaning called out in step 2.9. And for your awareness, hatch closure is required for undock in about 1 hour.
Copy. Should not take us that long. Can you point me in the direction of lint-free wipes?
Checking.
So this is a really great example, and I'll get back to that question from Joni. A really great example of how ground and station work together. Ground identified some dust, and it sounded like maybe even food debris or stain on one of the seals on that final hatch on the station, and she needs lint-free wipes. You know, you live on station, but there's so much stuff up there. Everything is tracked to a specific position. She's actually asking ground on where to go, and also ground was saying make sure you're using the correct brush, and also being like, you need to close that door so we can undock. So always really interesting to listen in to station to ground communications, and you can do this 24/7 right here. This is the layout for our live 24/7 coverage, so you can always stay up to date on the latest of station to ground comms. We've heard some amazing things over the past when we've had it live, and we're glad to have it back online. About 1 hour 16 minutes to undock. Joni, yeah, it makes it easier to dress out inside the capsule. The other two are already dressed. It helps with the protocol and timelines for it, so a lot goes into the sequence there. Sorry for the broken up answer. Justin, $5 super chat. Would I be able to see the reentry burn from Texas? I believe, actually, it is going to be... I'm going to have to run the math on that, on which way the trajectory is going to be, Justin. Whether they're going to come over the States or come up over the Gulf. So bear with me, and I'll try to get back to you on that. If they are coming over the United States, then you should be able to in Texas. If they're coming up over the Gulf, depends where you'd be able, in Texas you are. The ginger beef, how long will it take the astronauts to be able to stand and walk under their own strength after such time of microgravity? So that's a really big question, and ultimately there's not a set answer to that. Everyone's bodies are different and they rebound differently. Butch and Suni have been to space before, so they have an idea of what this rehabilitation will look like for them.
In the direction of where breakout is.
And Anne, did you say you did find those wipes?
Negative. Looking for a location for the lint-free wipes as well as breakout.
Copy. We're working that for you now.
Always amazing listening to the operations on the station. Generally, they can be walking within hours.
We have multiple brushes in the vacuum cleaners, but none of them are marked as hatch seal only.
Checking.
Space Station sending lots of questions down tonight.
I could just use Kapton tape for the seal. I think that would be effective on the dust. But we'll need the breakout.
Copy, Ann. We're taking a look.
Ginger beef, but back to your question, how long it'll take them to recover. That's something, as I was saying, it'll be different for everyone. Generally, they'll walk with support generally quite quickly within a few hours. But ultimately, they'll still have, a support team with them. A few days, they'll get back to normal. They'll work through kind of the general pains of experiencing gravity again, and then getting back to kind of full normal. They'll have some physio and stuff to do to get their body back as their muscles adapt back to having gravity. All the astronauts continue to work out on space station to help maintain that muscle mass and bone mass, limit the the reduction on that, so they can rebound faster once they're back on Earth. But ultimately, you can never fully compete with what you do lose in gravity. 0 gravity, or microgravity. So that's a really great question. Thanks for sending that in. It's Tyler. Do you know if they've selected astronauts for the Mars mission yet? That's going to be a crazy commitment. They have not. We know a group of astronauts that have been selected by NASA for the Artemis program, which would cover the Moon and Mars. So we do have a shortened list of names of astronauts.
We do have a breakout, still need the lint-free whites.
Copy.
I'm just imagining the person at NASA that's like, I found where the breakout is. Oh, they just found it. Now they're looking for the lint-free wipes still. So we don't know necessarily who will be the ones going to Mars. We've still got some time for that. We know who's part of Artemis 2. We don't even know who's part of Artemis 3 yet. So we're still a little ways away from picking that crew. But that's going to be a really incredible crew announcement. And absolutely, like you said, quite a commitment. I don't think it's an interesting statement. I don't think it's not a commitment of, there's still obviously a risk of loss of that crew. It's a highly new situation, but I think with all the technology advancements of Starship and everything else, and the test flights they're going to do of Starship going to Mars and landing, and the Optimus bots they'll have there helping prepare the region and be there to support the crew, I think it's becoming safer and safer every year as we get closer to it, that it's, there is a chance that if everything goes right, they will have a chance to come home. But there's a huge chance for things to go wrong as well. And ultimately, that's part of space exploration and the risk of it.
Station Houston on the Big Loop for Ann with tool locations. For the wipes, we are aware of some that are in airlock, deployed in the crew lock, in a 2.0 CTB, serial number 5042, and that is the Williams ECOC, and in that you will find lint-free absorbent wipes.
Copy. In the 2.0 5042 ECOC in the airlock, we can get the lint-free wipes. Brush for the hatch seal.
Good read.
Looks like they found some locations for those wipes. Hanisha, what kind of food do they consume in space? So with the cargo resupply, sometimes they're really lucky to send up some fresh fruits and vegetables for a day or two. But a lot of it is dehydrated and freeze-dried that they can rehydrate on station. They can add hot water or cold water and do it that way. So a lot of freeze-dried and a lot of dehydrated foods, but a lot of variety. It's gotten better from what we've heard over the last number of years. A lot more options to what they can eat, but ultimately also have heard that, when you get a resupply, you have options of all the options, but then everyone eats their favorites, which means, when you're waiting for that next resupply, those last few weeks, you get a little less option of what is there. A good question, but I'm not going to say your username. I encourage you to actually change it if you can. But is the Artemis program still a go? It is. It is still a current go at this point. We're waiting for updates from NASA. We're not expecting those until we have the new NASA administrator, which is Jared Isaacman, commander of Inspiration 4 and Polaris Dawn. And we'll hopefully have some updates from them once he is confirmed in as NASA administrator, hopefully in the coming weeks. And then ultimately it'll come down to Congress. If the Artemis program is going to be changed, that's going to take an act of Congress to change the restriction on NASA astronauts having to fly on SLS. So lots of ifs, not a lot of whens yet. Joni, have they set a date to abandon the ISS? So they'll never abandon it. Actually, they will retire it. So the International Space Station currently has commitments from everyone but Russia through 2030. Russia's committed till 2028 at this time. And then in 2030, they will. We've gotten a lot of information, and I'll try to work on a video of this in the coming weeks, but we've got a lot of information on what that retirement of the ISS, and then that'll be processed. But the whole retirement process is about a year long. And we'll, of course, have that with our 24/7 coverage. We'll put countdowns up when we have timelines firmed up, but we definitely have a few more years till we really dive into that. But know that SpaceX has won that contract for the deorbit vessel vehicle that'll dock and deorbit the station, and the station will be dropped into Point Nemo in the ocean, which is the furthest point from any landmass.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop for final system verifications. Ground has verified system reconfigurations for hatch closure are complete and nominal. In addition, control of cabin air temperature through 4.080 is allowed until pre-chill. Note that the hex is currently configured for maximum cooling.
Freedom copies. We've got max cooling and we can adjust as needed for the time being.
That's a good readback.
Question from Baby K. What are the names of the other ones to follow the journey back? They're all right here on our channel, Baby K. You just click our channel name and you'll see some of the other streams. So if it says it's an undocking stream, that stream will run till undock. Then we'll have our astronaut Butch and Suni return to Earth coverage. That'll stay live all the way through. And our Dragon Tracker stream isn't live yet, but it will be. Both of those will stay live the entire process. And then when we're almost at splashdown, we'll come live with a specific splashdown coverage. The reason we do that is anything that streams over 12 hours, you can't actually watch back in history because of how YouTube works. So we like to be able to rewatch undockings or splashdowns, but we also don't want to limit you guys of not being able to chat and listen in. So that's where the 24/7 streams keep running, and then we do specialized streams for the parts that we want to archive. Justin sending in a $5 super chat. Are they going to get? Are they really getting to build a new space station? NASA is not building a new space station. There are private space stations. One is called Axiom Station. It's by Axiom Space. It's really unique. It's actually going to get built onto the International Space Station to start, and then it'll separate prior to its completion, and then it'll become its own station in a similar orbit to the ISS before the ISS is retired. That's going to be really cool watching that, because we're going to have views of two space stations at some point in very close proximity. So that's going to be really awesome. There's a number of other stations in development. Vast Space, there is Orbital Reef with Blue Origin and a number of companies. And we're transitioning just like we have with crew operations, where SpaceX operates the spacesuits and the Crew Dragon capsules, and NASA just basically contracts them for missions. We're going to look at the same sort of thing. So these private companies will have their space stations, and NASA will be able to lease space to run science on them, but it also opens the opportunity that universities or colleges or other programs can rent and lease space on these stations as well, opening up commercial low Earth orbit operations. So it's a really exciting time, very different from what we're used to right now, and we're hoping that a few of these stations will be ready in time, that before the ISS is crewless, one of these stations will have crew, so we don't lose that timer that's counting up of the continuous presence in low Earth orbit. But great question. Thanks for sending that in. Justin adding it onto there. Sorry, I meant building a bigger station. Some of them can look bigger than the ISS. A really interesting fact is that Starship actually is near equivalent, if not more, living space in one Starship than is the entire International Space Station. And it's in one ship. So almost you launch one Starship and you got a bigger space station in a way. There's ideas, could you dock multiple together and build a station, and things like that. So lots of ideas for the future, but nothing permanent as of just yet. When is the next Starship launch? For Justin as a super chat as well. No date yet, still many weeks out, but you can follow along on our 24/7 Starbase Live, where we have live cameras looking at the production site, the launch site, and the Massey's test site, where a Super Heavy booster is currently being worked on. Trying to catch up on the chats here. You guys are sending in some great questions. Pappy's World, will they ever build a space station outside of Mars? I'm assuming you mean around Mars. Really great question. Possibly. Definitely is something we've heard, is an idea. We got to prove we can get there first. So that's a phase 2 or 3 idea, but definitely something I wouldn't be surprised we see in the next 20 years or so. Randy, thanks so much for becoming a suborbital explorer. I appreciate that. Hanisha, will you do a podcast with Suni Williams if she gives you a green signal? Because we have tons of questions to ask her. It's definitely something we want to try to do. We want them to give them time with their families, but we are working to do more astronaut interviews. We've done them before, so definitely stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed, and just stay tuned. Lots of exciting things being set up here. Raphael, are they landing in the Gulf? Yes, they are. That is the plan. We do not know the exact landing site yet. That is something that will be determined after undock, and then will be committed to prior to the deorbit burn. Thanks for sending that in. Rachel, thank you so much for that generous super chat there. $20. God bless y'all. Sorry about being questioned on the Gulf of America when this shouldn't be the focus, as this is epic history. Thank you for all you're doing, and God bless. I appreciate that. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for that support. We try to stay away from the politics. It's hard. Politics is part of everything, especially when you're talking all these different nations. But that's one of the amazing things about the ISS. Even with all of the world politics that it is right now, some of the nations that are the least friendly to each other are friends in space, and that's because the politics gets left behind when you become explorers, and you're living in a atmosphere in a place, or lack of atmosphere, that really wants to just try to kill you. And that's when you can really become unified, and it's awesome to see, and hopefully it'll continue for decades in the future. Tim, thank you for sending in a $5 super chat. No comment there, but thank you so much. I appreciate that. Catching up on your guys' comments and questions. You can keep sending them in by tagging us at the launch pad, and I'll try to make sure we're answering those. Armida, can you show video of inside the capsule? When we get that view back from NASA, we will try to do so. NASA controls those cameras. I really wish I could control those cameras, but they do not give those to the media here to control. But we are hoping to have live views. About 40 minutes from now, NASA will resume its coverage. We will patch that in then, but for now we are looking at these live views from the ISS and listening in to station-to-ground communications, where we are hearing Crew Dragon Freedom, as well as the ISS crew, talk to Mission Control. Sometimes it goes quiet because there's not much to say, as teams are working through their process. The ISS is working to clear some FOD, a foreign object debris, also known as dust, that is on one of the seals of the last hatch, and that last hatch needs to be closed before they can complete the undocking. Exilus, I've done some research reading, and there are two possibilities. One, they deorbit the ISS and start a new one, or two, they refurbish it and expand. So NASA has come out and said they are not going to build a new station. It financially and operation-wise doesn't make sense. The International Space Station, in theory, it could be boosted to a higher orbit, like we normally do. We boost it a few times a year. But the issue with the ISS is it is already past its expiration. Many of the modules on board the International Space Station were recommended to be used for crew until the mid-2010s. We're now in the mid-2020s, so they're coming up to double the age they were supposed to be used for. The ISS was originally supposed to be deorbited in the mid-2010s, and here we are expanding in another 15 years. So definitely some changes there, but the ISS does have an end date. Right now, 2030. Could we see it stretched another year or two? Maybe, but it's definitely not something we're going to see long term. I, like many, wish it would be pushed to a very high orbit where it could stay for decades, not to be used, but as a historical item, rather than thrown away into the ocean in a way. But ultimately, that is not what NASA has decided to do. It risks creating foreign objects and objects that are uncontrolled by leaving it up in orbit. That's why deorbiting it is a lot safer. Kim Murray, do they take freeze-dried candy to the ISS? That's a good question. I would assume so. Also, a lot of freeze-dried like fruits as well. So that'd be kind of like candy as well. Seenan, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Can you let me know in the chat if I'm saying that wrong? Sean, Sheenan, sorry. $13.99 super chat. Thank you so much. How far away is Mars from the ISS? Ooh, That's a good question. The ISS is about 450 kilometers above the Earth. Mars is, so I said about 450 roughly. Mars is 225 million kilometers, or 140 million miles. That is on average how far it is. It can range from anywhere from 33.9 million miles to 250.
Setup 7.6. Node 2 overhead hatch and MPEV are closed. The MPEV also capped. And I will get photos. I'll call you an SSC number in a minute when I download the photos.
Houston copies.
So we heard there. It sounds like they got that hatch cleaned up, the seal, and closed. So the closest Mars can come to Earth is 33.9 million miles, or 54.6 million kilometers. The furthest it can be away is 250 million miles, or 401 million kilometers. And you have to think about it. It's because Mars could actually be on the other side of the sun, away from us, on the complete other side of the solar system. And this is why we get Martian transfer windows. And this is when it is the best time to be able to launch missions to Mars. It happens about every 22 months. And that is why we are targeting next year to launch a fleet of starships with Optimus bots, it sounds like, on board to the Red Planet to prepare for a possible crew mission about 22 months later. So that is why we have those windows. Maybe one day we'll have other technology that we can, fly to Mars faster, and then we get a bigger window to go. But right now, with our current technology, we're locked down to those tighter windows if we want to go quickly. If we're okay taking a year or two, then there are other options, and you can do flybys and stuff as well. Great question. Thanks for sending that in. Still playing catch-up on your guys' chat. RM, will we ever see a rotating wheel space station like in 2001, A Space Odyssey, or anything else that could provide gravity? Yes, and really exciting about that is Vast Space will actually conduct their first artificial gravity demonstration with a module launching, I believe they were saying hopefully next year or late this year. I'd have to double check on that, but yes, there is space stations designed that will have artificial gravity, and one of the concepts is if they put enough of these modules, in theory you could put it into a wheel. Their current design is actually just to make it into a long sausage in space, and that is what the design is. But definitely there are other stations that have been dreamed of. Voyager station was to have two wheels rotating for gravity, artificial gravity. So lots of ideas, but there are multiple stations in active construction right now of demonstration modules that we'll hopefully see in the next couple years. Though it's sad to think the ISS has only a few years left, we're really on the brink of a really exciting evolution in the amount of space stations we have. We've seen in the last few years a kind of an evolution in rockets and having many new rockets come online. And because of that, now many new companies have formed to do things in space. And we're seeing that with space stations, which is really, really cool. If you're just joining us, though, welcome. We are now about 54 minutes away from the scheduled undocking of Crew Dragon Freedom, bringing Crew 9 with Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams of Starliner away from the International Space Station, beginning what will be just under a 17-hour journey back home from the International Space Station. The ISS is currently passing over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and you are looking at
Freedom SpaceX on the big for big picture downhill plan. Freedom, vestibule leak check is in work. The team's been working hard to take advantage of this good weather, and you are heading off the coast of Florida for 0318 splashdown at 2157 Zulu. We have the recovery vessel Megan on location and ready. There are a lot of timelines on your numbers app, but you can reference timeline 3 as a source of truth. We'll let you know if there's any changes to this plan. At this time, do you have any questions for us?
Sounds like a good plan.
So listening into the ground, giving an update to Crew Dragon Freedom that they're not rushing, but they've moved up undocking to today from what we were expecting on Wednesday. And that's due to weather forecasts for the Gulf and for the Atlantic and the area. They're going for the Gulf for return because they only have one recovery ship for this mission. The second recovery ship, Shannon, has been relocated to Los Angeles in the Pacific Ocean to begin with Crew 10 recovery missions. All will be taking place in the Pacific Ocean, and this is because the Pacific has generally more stable weather, and it also helps them eliminate the risk of the deorbit of the trunk debris. They've had a few missions now where they've deorbited kind of coming over North America or over Australia, and then with that, the trunk has actually, rather than fully burned up on re-entry, some chunks of it have landed in some farmers' fields and areas. So with that, they can burn and come over the Pacific, which means they'll be over water where the trunk would land. So, helping to evolve the Dragon program, but ultimately moves some of the operations that we've been used to. You also heard there that she said there's lots of plans and numbers, but if you want to know the one that's true, you can look at, I believe she said, timeline 3. So they have multiple timelines on their iPads and the computer on Dragon, and if they want to know which one to look at, timeline 3 is the one they're currently operating off of. So just a little more insight into how these missions are planned, and they would have looked at all these timelines on the ground. Butch and Suni obviously would have been trained on them on the space station during their time as they prepare. It's Tyler at the launch pad. If you had the option to go to Mars on the first crewed mission, would you go? No. If not, what would it take for you to go or consider it? I wouldn't. I have long said it's a cool place to live, that I'm lucky enough with doing the launch pad that the mindset of I hope one day to go up has changed to one day I know I'm going up. I just don't know where. I hope to... I think the moon would be a neat place to go to for like a visit, maybe a longer duration visit. Low Earth orbit would be amazing. I think Mars is going to be very hard. Hopefully, maybe one day before I'm too old, I could do, a 2-year journey to Mars, see the red planet for 6 months, 9 month journey there, spend 6 or 9 months, and then journey back, a 2-3 year kind of cruise to Mars. That'd be amazing. It'd be so incredible to see our planet float away and a new planet come in. No, not right now. Can't make me go. But hopefully one day. But great question. Thielpan? I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. I'm excited for NASA's Artemis 3 stream. Well, we got to get to Artemis 2 first. We are now hearing as early as February 2026. Our crew is actively working plans for the Artemis 2 coverage. So we'll be, of course, covering all of that right here. So make sure you're subscribed. And then, yes, even more exciting, Artemis 3. If you're just joining us, though, we are about 49 minutes away from that scheduled time of undocking from the International Space Station. We are listening in to live station-to-ground communications. You guys can keep sending in your comments and questions in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. Also, make sure you join us over on the TLP Discord. The link's in the chat there. Thanks, Nightbot. Make sure you join there. That's where the community hangs out in between streams to talk about everything space. It's also where you can get stream alerts and more, so definitely check that out. I see some people have been jumping in the Discord while I've been live. Mike from Texas, great to see you. We got Air Striker, Turk Sky, The Last Planet Ranger, Ron Tyler, Louise, Turtle Dove Love, Keith, Devin. Great to see all of you there. Definitely take a moment and introduce yourself in the Discord. You're welcome to join the TLP live comms. Sometimes people get together and watch the streams together, and that's really cool because space is better together. Also, while we have a little bit of time before NASA gets spooled up with their live coverage again, check out the launchpad.store. That's where we have our TLP launch gear. All of the profits go from that into expanding our capabilities with equipment to bring you guys even better coverage as well. So check that out. Global shipping's available there for that. We've got sizes from extra small and small to 5XL. Make sure there's something for everyone. and definitely take a moment while we have time to check out those incredible posters and metal prints from our TLP rocket chasers. Rachel, how is Crew 9 get down to Earth while splashdown? We have 17 hours, 39 minutes to splashdown. Tony Beach, are we still going to pay taxes when we relocate to Mars? Good question. Next question. We don't know yet. Good question. Hopefully not. We'll see. Late Bros, hi, what other coverage do you provide? So here at the Launchpad Network, we actually have 2 channels right now. This is our main channel. This is the Launchpad. This is where we do all of our live coverage. So we do rocket engine testing. We do live launch coverage. We do ISS coverage of dockings and undockings and stuff. We also bring you live coverage and trackers, 24/7 mission trackers. So following along with missions to the moon, the James Webb mission deployment, things like that where, it's a multi-week or multi-month updates. We try to run those for you guys. And then we have our second channel, which we've just started up, which is called the Launchpad News. Definitely take a moment and check that out if you can. That is our second channel where we're working on bringing out news updates, starting with once a week, and then we're going to try to get those to more often than that, where we bring you video updates of some of the latest space news that is related to the articles that we release on our website, tlpnetwork.com/news. It's the Launchpad News division of TLP Network. We're expanding that, so super excited to have that second channel. If you haven't yet, subscribe here. If you can, subscribe on the second one. If you want to stay up to date on space news, that's where we will do live coverage of news conferences, press conferences, things like that, as well as then the video news updates and shorts there as well. So 2 channels right now, plans for future, maybe for more, but so we'll take it slow. But our mission is to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And we know there's many places you can watch some of the coverage from different channels. We know some have better cameras, some have worse cameras, and we appreciate that you choose us. And we think that's because we do believe that space is better together, and this community is a really amazing community. And we're glad to have all of you here. We, I hope that's said right. Thanks so much for becoming a lunar explorer. I appreciate your support on that level. Thank you so much. Salty, staying with the new space stations being built, have you heard of them building like storage and refueling stations, like a refueling and stocking on the trip to Mars? Not with the current stations that are being designed. Starship will dock to other starships for refilling, and then we'll go, some of the ships will come back to Earth, the tanker ships, and then the cruise ship or cargo ships will go to Mars or the moon. But it's definitely something that people are proposing. It would be quote unquote easier to launch starships to like a refueling station over the course of days or weeks leading up to a mission, rather than trying to do it all within a tighter timeline. So it's definitely something I'd probably see us doing in the future, especially when you think about we want to start launching fleets of 5, 10, 15, 20 plus starships to Mars. Well, one starship currently needs anywhere from 8 to 12 tanker starships to refill it to go to the moon. So we're definitely going to need a lot of starships to do that. And there's other vessels still, other rockets as well. So possibly. Late Bros, thank you. Do you have to pay to get access to these streams? I just assumed they were public, I guess. Our streams we give out publicly. We are doing some member streams. Going to start those up again, which are kind of more casual question and answer periods, some behind the scenes stuff. But we try to do all of our coverage as public as we can. For the feeds where we get them, some of them are our own, where we have our own cameras and broadcast systems out in the field. Other feeds, we are media accredited with NASA, SpaceX, ESA, and a bunch of other agencies and launch providers globally. So as media, we're allowed to rebroadcast them as we're adding our own overlays and commentary and things as well. So that's why we're authorized to do so as media. NASA is technically public because it's a government agency. So Fraslavko 1, sorry if saying that wrong. Nice channel. First time here. I'm in Oregon. Very interested in narrating. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. John's tuning in from Manchester. Sharon, thanks so much for becoming a suborbital explorer. I appreciate your support there. Jake YT, random question unrelated to Starship, but what advanced propulsion do you see happening by the end of the century? I reckon possibly fission or fusion. It's a very interesting question, and I'll be honest, and this is something I always try to do. If I don't know an answer, I don't know. I honestly couldn't even have a guess on what we could see there. I do know of 2 engines that are currently in development. One is a nuclear engine that could cut down our mission to Mars to 30 days, which would be truly incredible to do. The other is from a company called Magdrive. They are working on creating small, like thruster-sized engines that if you then put a bunch of them together, you could basically make like a bigger engine using a lot of little engines. And they are called Magdrive because they're actually trying to use metal as a propellant. And they're having some great success with that and are getting ready to launch a demonstration mission this year to prove their technology in space, which is a really cool idea because their thought is there are different metals on different planetary bodies and asteroids. So if you have an engine that you can use metal as the propellant, it makes it a lot easier. So it's really cool. Little shout out there to the Magdrive team. We got to meet them last year when we were in England. Sound Guy, thank you so much for that super chat. I appreciate it. I think that many days in space, they're going to need a lot of physical therapy to walk again. Think with that many days, yes. Yeah, they're definitely going to take some time. Butch and Suni have done long duration missions before. Quick note, we can see we're coming closer to that Terminator line again from dark into light. But even with how far away, we're still about a quarter of the way to the Terminator line. We can start to see the sun peeking around the Earth, giving us a great view of Crew Dragon Freedom, where Crew 9 with Butch and Suni are on board, suited up, ready to depart the International Space Station in about 40 minutes' time. But yes, they're definitely going to need lots of physical therapy, like any astronaut would from a long-duration mission. Dominic, thanks for becoming a suborbital explorer. I appreciate that. Fraslavko saying ha 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 for $5. I appreciate it. I have a feeling I probably said your name wrong, and I apologize. If you can tell me how to say it phonetically and tag me, I'll try to make sure I say it right. Fairmaid, how many cameras on Dragon, including those we don't see? The ones we don't see are the ones we don't know are there. We know Starship has 25 to 30 on Starship that they've said publicly. On Dragon, we don't have an exact number. We're sure there's many. And there's also a number of cameras that they plug in, where they actually add them separately. They're more portable. So I don't have an exact number for that for you. I can try to look it up, but see if there's ever been an official number, but definitely multiple. I know of at least 5, at least 5 angles that I can think of that we always see. There's the mission specialist kind of angle on each side on the left and right. There's normally a straight-on shot from kind of where the toilet is, roughly, looking straight towards the crew. There's the camera behind the commander and pilot looking towards the hatch. And then we know there's normally a camera or 2 down where the cargo area is, because originally that was designed where there could be 3 more crew. Heather K, thanks for becoming a lunar explorer. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that support. Jake, have you seen the show For All Mankind? If you would not, if not, would you definitely I would definitely recommend it. Yes, love For All Mankind. If you haven't checked it out, not sponsored in any way, definitely an amazing show and gets you thinking on what our future might be like. Jennifer, is there a live feed 24/7 inside the ISS that's public? There is not. We've tried. We've reached out to see if there'd ever be possible, but there is not any public cameras on the ISS. It is a research station, so not all that is public, and the crew also just generally needs some privacy as well. They're living and working there 24/7, so. It's Tyler with a big question. Do you think there is other life out there? We'll find out. No, that's not a very good answer for you, but I think there's more things pointing to there is other life out there. If you think life is anything that is born created, is there other carbon-based humanoid life forms like us? That's probably a bit more complex. It has to have really specific parameters for a planet to work. You know, if Earth spun 0.1% faster, 0.1% slower, was a meter closer to the sun or a meter further from the sun, we wouldn't work, or we might not exist at all. So we have to, it's very specific how humanoid carbon-based life forms like humans work. So that's going to be harder to find. But some sort of life, I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there's some sort of bacteria or other life out there that hopefully one day we get to find. Hopefully in our lifetime. We'll have to see. Some really great questions there. I appreciate you guys sending those in. We are 37 minutes away from undocking, just under 17 and a half hours from splashdown. It's going to be a long night, and I'm going to take a very quick commentary break here. I get a refresh on the drink, check in with the amazing moderator team we've got going. We got Lewis and Matt in the chat there, and check in with the team as we get ready for Crew 9's return to Earth. You can keep sending in your questions by tagging me at the launch pad. I'll work on answering those. And stay with us. We're not going anywhere. 36 minutes, 30 seconds till undocking of Crew 9 on board Crew Dragon Freedom. You're listening to live station-to-ground communications from the International Space Station. Stay with us.
Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop, vestibule leak check nominal, stepping into residual depress shortly. Station, Houston, on the Big Loop. In preparation for undock, perform step 1 of 1.303, crew monitoring of ACS moding for Dragon departure. Undock sequence start time, 0500 GMT.
Station on the Big Loop. Step 1 is complete. Dragon undocking preparation complete, and ISS crews ready for departure.
Houston copies.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here. You were hearing there on the Big Loop, station to ground communications via the Big Loop, which is the International Space Station, Crew Dragon Freedom, and the ground, as we are now just under 21 minutes away from departure of Crew Dragon Freedom there on the left side of your screen, right side of screen looking straight down, currently passing over the ocean, coming up to Australia in the next couple of minutes there, and NASA is getting ready to begin their live coverage of undocking, so we will of course patch them in and listen in to NASA and SpaceX Mission Control for updates as we follow through undocking. But if it's your first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we appreciate your guys' support. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage the like button, share with the stream, invite people to join us. We're 20 minutes away from undocking. Captain Jerry had a question. What's the difference between space and outer space? And that's a really great question. Generally, the space is kind of anything off planet. Outer space is once you get out of the influence of the Earth's kind of region. That's generally how I would describe it. And I was talking with our team on how they describe it as well. So that's generally kind of what the thought is there. But thank you so much for your super chat supporting in that way. Tim, thank you, Tim Seidler. Thank you for upgrading your membership to Lunar Explorer. We appreciate you supporting on that level, and we appreciate it. Jay, is the Launchpad Canadian? I am, eh? Did the accent come through there at some point? It might have. I am Canadian. I'm lucky to get to live in the States as well, bouncing between our Canadian studio and our Space Coast studio in Florida. So very, very lucky to get to cover this thanks to your guys' support. It's a dream to get to do this and be part of the space industry in some way, and take you along that journey of showing you this new era of space exploration from around the world as we take the next big leap to the moon and then on to Mars. NASA's getting spooled up here, and we are going to, of course, patch them in. Once we are listening in, I will continue to answer your guys' comments and questions, so you can keep sending them in the chat by tagging me at the Launchpad. I'll try to work on answering those in the chat and on commentary when we have some lulls in there. We're about 18 minutes or so away from undocking, 17 hours, 10 minutes from splashdown. You're listening in to the Launchpad at our live return to Earth coverage of astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams after their extended stay on the International Space Station, and the rest of Crew 9 as Crew Dragon Freedom prepares to undock from the International Space Station. 18 minutes to undocking. Let's listen in to NASA and SpaceX Mission Control and the ISS Big Loop.
It's March 17th, and we're joining you today from SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. We're following along with the Dragon Freedom spacecraft as we await Crew 9 beginning its 10:05 p.m. Pacific, 1:05 a.m. Eastern departure from the International Space Station, with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Suni Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov. I'm Veronica Foreman, a senior sales manager here at SpaceX.
And I'm Sandra Jones with NASA Public Affairs and Communications. It is so great to be back here.
It is really great to have you back, Sandra. And of course, thank you to everyone tuning in to watch live coverage of Dragon completing its 9th crew rotation mission to the space station through NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Crew 10 arrived on station on Sunday, March 16th at 12:04 a.m. Eastern. That's March 15th for those of us here in the Pacific time zone. And they will be taking over for Crew 9, who are now headed home.
That's right, and Crew 10 did launch just a few days ago on March 14th with NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nicole Ayers, JAXA or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov. They've spent a couple days in space, with those days docked to the International Space Station being what we call a handover period, where they learn to live and work on station from the crew that's about to leave. Now, the returning Crew 9 members today are NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Suni Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov, which you see on your screen right there. Suni and Butch spent 285 days on the International Space Station, where they conducted over 4,500 orbits and traveled more than 121 million statute miles. Nick and Alexander spent 170 days on the International Space Station, conducting over 2,700 orbits and traveling more than 72 million statute miles.
The crew is currently suited, and the Dragon and station hatches are both sealed in preparation for Dragon's departure. Once Dragon departs the station, the crew's flight home is expected to last just around 17 hours. Shortly after separation, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of carefully choreographed maneuvers, also called departure burns, to increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. Dragon will also execute a phasing burn to lower its orbit and line the spacecraft up with its landing location. Following phasing, Dragon will complete deorbit, re-entry, and splashdown. During the deorbit sequence, several events occur, including trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and finally splashdown. Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida on Tuesday, March 18th at approximately 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern, where it will be picked up by the SpaceX recovery vessel Megan, and our recovery teams will help to egress or exit the crew from the Dragon spacecraft.
And today on board the International Space Station is the Expedition 72 crew, being led by the current space station commander, Aleksandr Gorbunov of Roscosmos. Last week, NASA astronaut Suni Williams handed over command of the space station to him ahead of her upcoming departure today. Also on board space station is NASA astronaut Don Pettit, as well as cosmonauts Aleksandr Gorbunov, Yvonne Wagner, and of course, the recently arrived Crew 10 astronauts. Now, just like its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board. NASA astronaut Anne McClain helped the crew.
Freedom, SpaceX on the Big Loop. Final reconfigurations for undock complete and nominal. Houston and Hawthorne teams have pulled go for undock sequence start at 0500 Zulu. I'm looking for you to confirm visors down and crew are ready for undock and departure at the planned time.
And we did just hear confirmation that the team in Mission Control and the team in Hawthorne did pull go for undocking. We might hear some continued communications.
Freedom. Visors are down and we are go for undock at the planned time.
SpaceX copies. Crew are configured for undock.
And so that was the voice of NASA astronaut Nick Hague, who is the commander of Dragon, giving the confirmation that they heard the go. So good news, we are continuing to progress down the timeline today for an undocking at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time here in Hawthorne. Now, Mission Control in both Houston and Hawthorne will be backing them up today as we step through undocking. And speaking of Mission Control Houston, let's go over to the voice of NASA, Rob Navius at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, to talk a bit about how the station crew have been preparing to send them and what we can expect from here until Dragon departs station. Rob?
Well, thank you, Sandra. It's been a busy morning so far. About 2 hours ago, the 4 departing Crew 9 crew members did gather in the Harmony module right at the passageway through International Docking Adapter number 2, which connects Harmony with the Dragon Freedom. They had a final opportunity to say goodbye to one another, a final opportunity for the remaining crew members on the station, members of the Expedition 72 crew, to take photographs. As you see there, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore were already suited up in their SpaceX entry suits. Once that was completed and the crew floated back into Freedom, Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov also suited up. Now, just for the statistic freaks out there, we can tell you that Williams and Wilmore, whose mission, of course, was extended. They launched back on June 5th aboard the Boeing Starliner spacecraft, Last August, NASA decided to bring them home on the Dragon Freedom spacecraft with Crew 9. They will come home with a splashdown on Tuesday afternoon with 286 days in space, a mission encompassing 4,576 orbits of the Earth and 121.3 million miles. But just to put it into context, not the longest single space flights in U.S. history. That distinction belongs to Frank Rubio, who remained on the station for 371 days when his Soyuz spacecraft experienced a coolant leak. He's followed on the list by Mark Vande Hei with 355 days, Scott Kelly with 340, Christina Cook with 328, and Peggy Whitson with 289 days in space. So although Williams and Wilmore have in fact had an extended mission, it's not a record-breaking mission. As we stand by for the final procedures to be encompassed here in Mission Control, you're looking at Flight Director Marcos Flores, who is the lead Crew 9 flight director here. To his right is spacecraft communicator Tess Caswell, who will be talking directly to the crew during the undocking phase and during the time the Dragon moves toward the approach ellipsoid, that mythical line in the sand where we complete integrated operations and turn over everything to the folks in Hawthorne to bring Crew 9 home for its splashdown in the Gulf of America on Tuesday afternoon. With that, we'll turn it back to you guys in Hawthorne and stand by for undocking.
Thanks so much, Rob. Thanks so much, Rob. So as you mentioned, we are standing by for separation, which is set to take place here in a little bit more than 10 minutes. We are tracking a 10:05 p.m. Pacific time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern time departure from the space station.
And as we mentioned earlier, just like during its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board. Departure is typically faster and a little bit easier since the crew won't have to stop at any waypoints like we see when a spacecraft arrives to the space station.
Once the undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of 4 departure burns, which are carefully strategized maneuvers that increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. From there, a phasing burn will place Dragon on a trajectory to align it with the splashdown site.
At the moment, the crew is suited up as they are during what we call dynamic phases of flight. And we did hear a call out a short time ago for the crew to go ahead and put their visors down ahead of the actual undocking itself. Before they depart the International Space Station, let's take a quick moment to get to know the crew we're bringing home tomorrow for the splashdown rather. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew 9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013, and this was his second space flight to the International Space Station and third launch overall. He spent 171 days in space with Crew 9 and has a career total of 374 days in space. During his mission, he completed a spacewalk with astronaut Suni Williams. That was his 4th spacewalk, earning him a career total of 25 hours, 56 minutes of spacewalking time. Before Crew 9, Hague previously served as a crew member of Expedition 59 and 60 back in 2019. He flew with Alexei Ovchinin and NASA's Christina Cook, so this is actually his 2nd time sharing the space station with Ovchinin. The Kansas native is a test pilot and distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and he voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to the U.S. Space Force in 2021. And he is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons.
NASA astronaut Suni Williams is a mission specialist for Crew 9. This was her 3rd visit to the space station. She originally launched aboard Boeing's Starliner spacecraft and arrived at the space station on June 6th. Following the agency's decision to return Starliner uncrewed, she became an Expedition 71-72 crew member. She logged 286 days in space on this mission. Suni has a total of 608 days in space, earning her the ranking of 2nd most time in space by a NASA astronaut. Former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson ranks 1st with 675 days in space. Suni conducted 2 spacewalks and has completed 9 over the course of her career, for a total of 62 hours and 6 minutes of spacewalking time. She ranks 4th on the list of cumulative time spacewalking by a NASA astronaut. Previously, she served on Expedition 14 and 15 in 2007, and again with Expedition 32 and 33 in 2012. She is a retired U.S. Navy captain and a proud graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy.
Next up is NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore, who is also serving as a mission specialist today. This is his third space flight, and just like Suni, he logged 286 days in space. He conducted 1 spacewalk and has completed 5 over the course of his career, earning him a total spacewalking time of 21 hours, 2 minutes. He's flown on 4 different spacecraft throughout his career: Space Shuttle Atlantis, Soyuz, Boeing Starliner, and now the SpaceX Dragon. Previously, the Mount Juliet, Tennessee native served on STS-129 in 2009 and Expedition 41 and 42 from 2014 to 2015. Wilmore is also a retired captain in the U.S. Navy.
Aleksandr Gorbunov is the 3rd mission specialist serving on today's mission. Crew 9 was his first spaceflight to the space station, earning him a total of 171 days in space over the course of his career. Gorbunov, along with Nick Hague, saw the arrival of 4 visiting vehicles and saw the departure of 4 as well. The duo orbited the Earth more than 2,700 times. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, Gorbunov worked as an engineer for a rocket space corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. There is an amazing amount of diversity and experience behind the crew coming home today.
Yes, absolutely. And so we are targeting undocking today at 10:05 p.m. Pacific, just a few minutes here from now. There will be an undock command that is sent first. That is expected at 10 p.m. Pacific time. And then it'll take a few minutes for us to actually see the physical separation and everything. But we are getting views right now of Dragon Freedom. What you see on that black portion of your screen there is some of the solar rays that help collect power for the spacecraft. That will remain intact during the phasing, which is about 17 hours for this particular flight. But before splashdown tomorrow afternoon, which we are targeting at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, that portion of Dragon will actually be jettisoned. So it'll just be the white portion that we'll see splashdown. But we're not quite there yet. First, we need to have the spacecraft undock. So again, targeting undock at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time this evening.
That's absolutely right, Sandra. So right now what we're doing on board Dragon is preparing for that undocking sequence to be commanded. Undocking from the space station basically involves separating the umbilicals and those attachment hooks that we use to dock Dragon to the space station. So we're effectively doing what we did during the docking procedure here, but in reverse. All of that in preparation for splashdown tomorrow.
Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop, undock sequence commanded.
And right on schedule, we've got confirmation of that undocking sequence command.
Freedom copies.
Here in Houston in Mission Control, we are now monitoring the demating of the umbilical. This is the mechanism that provided electrical power to the Dragon Freedom during the time it was docked to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. Originally, Freedom docked at the forward port of Harmony and then back on November 3rd with Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbunov on board. Umbilical demate reported to be complete. As we stand by for the initiation of the opening of the hooks, 2 gangs of hooks, 12 hooks in all, holding Dragon to the docking port on the zenith side of Harmony. Again, Harmony was the port of call for Freedom initially when it arrived back in September. The forward port itself, it experienced a relocation maneuver with Hague, Gorbunov, Williams, and Wilmore on board back on November 3rd to move from the forward port to the zenith port, a short spin around the block to reposition that spacecraft where it has been mated and docked to the International Space Station since last November. 3.5 minutes away from physical separation. Once the physical separation occurs between Dragon and the docking port on Harmony, it will begin to move above the station at a very slow rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second. Then we'll move behind the station. A series of departure burns will then put it on a trajectory to carry it below the station and on its way to a safe distance away from the International Space Station for its deorbit burn that will occur at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon to begin the final leg of the ride home for Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbunov. Two and a half minutes to go until physical separation. All systems reported to be in great shape. The latest weather forecast off the coast of Florida at the splashdown sites indicates pristine weather for the arrival of the Crew 9 crew on Tuesday afternoon.
Open and nominal.
The first gang of hooks has opened, standing by for the second. Springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another to initiate that opening rate for Dragon. "90 seconds till physical separation. Heading into the home stretch for Williams and Wilmore, the beginning of the end for a 9.5-month mission in space." The interface between Dragon and the International Docking Adapter no longer sealed. The International Space Station and Dragon flying from southwest to northeast across the Pacific Ocean at an altitude of 261 statute miles.
All hooks open.
All hooks are open. And undocking confirmed. Freedom is free of its moorings. Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore begin their belated trip home.
Separation confirmed.
Undocking occurring right on time at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. Good motion, good stability on Dragon as it backs away.
Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop, depart burn 0 nominal.
Vehicle officer. Dragon's attitude control system functioning as advertised.
Peace and freedom on the big loop. On behalf of Crew 9, I'd like to say it was a privilege to call station home, to live and work and be a part of a mission and a team that spans the globe, working together in cooperation for the benefit of humanity. To our colleagues and dear friends who remain on the station, Alex and Dave Rutach, Grill, we know the station's in great hands. We're excited to see what you guys are going to accomplish, and we'll be waiting for you. Crew 9's going home.
station on the big loop. Step 2, ISS thrusters are verified enabled. To Crew 9, safe journey home. It's been the honor of a lifetime to cross your path up here on Space Station. Your service has been very much appreciated, and we'll miss you, but have a great journey home.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're listening into Big Loop Communications between Crew 9, the International Space Station, and the ground, as Crew 9 with Butch Wilmore, Suni Williams, and the rest of Crew 9 are beginning their journey home on Crew Dragon Freedom. We're just under 17 hours away from splashdown. Let's listen back into Mission Control.
We're ringing a bell in Navy tradition, and for Crew 9, I did a baritone salute as you undocked.
Love you guys.
So an exchange of poignant words between the Dragon commander, Nick Hague, as well as the Crew 10 crew, the newly arrived Crew 10 crew members, Anne McLean, Takoya Onishi, and Don Pettit, offering their best wishes and Godspeed for a safe return to Earth on Tuesday afternoon for the quartet aboard the Dragon Freedom. Dragon continues an opening rate away from the zenith port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station, undocking occurring just about 5 minutes ago at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, coming up here in the next minute or so will be the spacecraft's exit from what is called the keep-out sphere. That is the first imaginary line between the space station and the departure corridor for the Dragon itself. That will be followed by Dragon maneuvering to a Sun communications pointing orientation and to enable better communications between the tracking and data relay satellite system and Dragon's communications capability itself. The approach ellipsoid exit, that basically is the end of integrated operations, where Dragon will cross that imaginary line to move beyond the neighborhood of the station, as it were, is scheduled about 14 minutes from now. The departure one
Freedom,
burn now
SpaceX
complete,
on the
all
big loop,
nominal.
Depart burn 1 nominal. Your go to doff suits per procedure 4.012. And a final reminder that the big loop will be deactivated following Dragon's exit from the approach ellipsoid.
Copy. Good depart 1 burn, and we are good to doff suits. That's in work momentarily. We'll expect to go off big loop when we get outside the field, sir.
That's a good readback, Freedom.
With all the Freedom thrusters operating in perfect fashion, the acknowledgement by the spacecraft communicator in Hawthorne to Commander Nick Hague aboard Freedom that the crew has been given the go-ahead to get out of their entry suits for the time being, get into more comfortable clothing as Dragon continues its traverse away from the International Space Station. This will continue throughout the course of the overnight hours into tomorrow afternoon, a series of pre-programmed maneuvers that will enable Freedom to be in a position for its deorbit burn on Tuesday afternoon. That deorbit burn is scheduled to take place at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver to enable Dragon to slip out of orbit. Its velocity slowed by 53.2 meters per second, enabling it to begin its high-speed entry back through Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America at 4:57 p.m. Central, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time.
Station and Houston, on the big loop, Dragon has exited the keep out sphere.
Station copies.
Freedom, SpaceX on the
McLean,
big loop. Dragon has
acknowledging
exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a 24-hour safe free drift path. Configure comm for Dragon to ground in preparation for big loop deactivation. I'm Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop. Premature call. We have exited the keep out sphere but are still in the approach ellipsoid.
SpaceX Freedom, come check on the hidden light.
Freedom, we have you loud and clear. How us?
the Dragon having crossed the keep-out sphere. Next major milestone will be the exiting of the approach ellipsoid to depart the neighborhood of the station. With that, we'll toss it for the moment back to Hawthorne and Veronica and Sandra.
Thanks so much, Rob. As Rob just mentioned, we are now waiting for Dragon to exit the approach ellipsoid, also known as AE, which is another imaginary shape, this time a three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, in the same family as the keep-out sphere. It's one of several safety zones set up to govern visiting spacecraft, either arriving or departing the station. Before moving into the keep-out sphere or the approach ellipsoid, spacecraft have to be configured where they would not cross the imaginary boundary for a set period of time, even if the spacecraft lost all maneuvering.
That's right. And that approach ellipsoid, once we get past that milestone, will be something that we call the end of integrated operations. And integrated operations means that we are talking to each other on the big loop. So we did hear those communications back and forth. The big loop, not only the crew on the International Space Station, the crew in Dragon, but also both Mission Control Houston and in Hawthorne. Hence the name, the Big Loop, because they're all working together to make sure that they have common communications during some of these dynamic portions of flight. So again, we are standing by for approach ellipsoid exit at 10:24 p.m. Pacific time. And on your screen there, we are getting a view of Dragon from the International Space Station, now quite a bit smaller than when we just saw a few minutes ago, undocking at 10:05 p.m. Pacific. Also in the line of sight there, we have a small view of the Canada arm, which is a robotic arm that helps do some maneuvering and is utilized a lot during spacewalks on board the International Space Station. So to recap, the hatches between the International Space Station and Dragon were closed earlier today at 8:05 p.m. Pacific, 11:05 p.m. Eastern. Since then, the crew has settled in and is working to take off their spacesuits for their 17-hour journey back to Earth. The joint NASA and SpaceX teams did, of course, pull go to proceed with undocking, and that undocking command was then sent at 10 p.m. Pacific, followed by umbilical retraction and hooks opening, with physical separation taking place at 10:05 p.m. Pacific, as the space station and Dragon were traveling 261 statute miles off the coast of Guam over the Pacific Ocean. Dragon then completed 2 of 4 departure burns and has exited the keep-out sphere, and we are now just minutes away from Dragon crossing the approach ellipsoid to set the spacecraft and Crew 9 up for their path back to Earth. Again, Dragon is targeting to splash down off the coast of Florida in the Gulf at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, March 18th, marking the completion of a long-duration science and research mission.
Great views right now on your screen of mission control here in Hawthorne, California.
It looks like we're starting to get maybe some views there of Dragon as well. These views are being controlled by one of the flight controllers in Mission Control Houston called Cronus, and they help to make sure that the cameras are in position to view not only visiting vehicles that are arriving and departing, but also help to ensure that cameras are in position to get great Earth views, ensure that perhaps if we're flying over a natural disaster like a hurricane or a wildfire, they are ensuring that those great cameras on board the International Space Station are being put to good use to capture all of the science and research that we can aboard the microgravity laboratory. And, you know, fun fact, actually, the International Space Station will be celebrating 25 years of continuous human presence this November. So if you are younger than 25 years old, you have never known a day in your life where there was not a human being living and working aboard the International Space Station.
That is so cool to me. It's just this amazing step forward for human exploration in space.
And with that, we're going to check back in with Rob Navius at the Johnson Space Center one more time. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Sandra. You mentioned that continuous presence on board the International Space Station. We are approaching the point of the approach ellipsoid exit, which will mark the end of integrated operations with the International Space Station and the flight control team here in Houston. Just a reminder, on board, 7 crew members representing 3 nations: Alexei Ovchinin, the station commander, and his Roscosmos colleagues Ivan Wagner and Kirill Peskov, Anne McLean, Nicole Ayers, and Don Pettit of NASA, and Takoya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Ovchinin, Wagner, and Pettit are next up to depart the station on April 19th. They are scheduled to return home to the steppe of Kazakhstan and a parachute-assisted landing on April 19th U.S. time, April 20th in Kazakhstan. Before that happens, another NASA astronaut, Johnny Kim, along with 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts, will be launching from Baikonur on April 8th, as that continuous presence of researchers on board the International Space Station continues unbroken. Sandra?
And thank you so much, Rob, for that update. We really appreciate you joining us here as you spent your evening in Mission Control Houston. Again, we are continuing to get these views following Dragon's undocking from the International Space Station at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time. That sets us up for a splashdown tomorrow afternoon at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time off the coast of Florida. And so we did mention that the crew was busy with a lot of science and research investigations during their time on board the International Space Station. That really is the whole point of the International Space Station, is to conduct science and research investigations, eventually leading to longer duration missions to the moon and then on to Mars.
For any further communications from Crew 9 on board Dragon Freedom at this time. But it's a great opportunity for us to comment on some of the amazing science that Crew 9 conducted while they were on board the station. In total, Crew 9 completed more than 150 experiments conducting over 900 hours of research. Following their splashdown tomorrow, some of those time-sensitive experiments will be among the first offloaded off the capsule and then returned to various research facilities across the country so that the science can continue.
And in addition to that science, they also completed a few spacewalks, one of which was to actually swab the outside of the International Space Station for microorganisms to see if anything might potentially be able to survive the harsh environment of space, which is pretty interesting. Another one was a spacewalk to remove a radio frequency group, or the RFG. NASA astronaut Suni Williams was able to successfully remove that, which was a big milestone for NASA. And as you mentioned, over 530 hours specifically dedicated to NASA science between NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. So that just goes to show the great use that the microgravity lab has for science and research on the ground.
I still can't get over that fact that you shared that it has been almost 25 years of continuous operation on board the ISS. That's amazing.
Yes, over 270
Station
people.
on 2 for PMA 3 closeout photos.
Go ahead, Ann.
I just downlinked the card with all of the PMA 3 and IDA and Dragon Hatch photos, as well as Crew 9 departure. Those are on SSC 17.
Copy, 1-7.
And just want to clarify, also on 17, I did a whole series of kind of inspection documentation photos before departure, and then a series after departure per the instructions. So 2 different folders with before and after photos.
We copy.
And that was the voice of NASA astronaut Ann McClain, who is still on board the International Space Station, stepping through procedures with the ground to wrap up after undocking, taking some photography of the hatch that the team on the ground will inspect, make sure everything checks out just fine. So we are awaiting the confirmation that Crew Dragon Freedom has exited the approach ellipsoid. We're expecting that here in just a couple of seconds here, really. So we might hear that call out here shortly.
And again, if you're just joining us, the approach ellipsoid is a 3-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep-out sphere. One of the key differences with the AE is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory, which means that the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours again, even if it lost all maneuvering.
That's exactly right. So we'll continue to stand by for that. Now, you may be wondering, what will the crew be doing during their 17-hour phasing? You did hear the call out earlier that they had to go to doff or take off their spacesuits. So they'll get settled in, have the opportunity to have a meal, and try and get some sleep before their targeted splashdown off the coast of Florida tomorrow afternoon at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow afternoon. So we are looking forward to seeing them splash down off the coast of Florida tomorrow. So continuing to stand by for that approach ellipsoid exit. Should be hearing the call out any moment now. And that will really end the portion of integrated operations between the Space Station, Dragon, Hawthorne, Mission Control, and Mission Control Houston as well.
Freedom, SpaceX on the Big Loop. Dragon has now exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a 24-hour safe free drift path. Please make sure that comm is configured for Dragon to ground.
And SpaceX Freedom on Dragon to ground. Understand we're out the approach. Ellipsoid, 24-hour freedom.
Good confirmations there, both from Mission Control and Dragon.
And again, we did hear confirmation that Dragon Freedom has now exited the approach ellipsoid, or AE, which is that imaginary shape that's three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep out sphere. So one of the key differences with the AE is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call that 24-hour safe free drift trajectory. This means that the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours, again, even if it lost all maneuvering.
With that, Crew 9 has officially departed the International Space Station. As Sandra mentioned, it will take them about 17 hours until they make their way back to Earth. So the crew is currently settling, as Sandra mentioned, for a little bit of dinner, or maybe get their suits off before they take some time to rest before returning to Earth. Dragon is, of course, targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida tomorrow at 5:57 p.m. Eastern, 2:57 p.m. Pacific on March 18th, followed by the crew getting picked up at sea by a SpaceX recovery vessel. As they rest up, our teams here will continue to keep an eye on the weather to ensure a safe return for Dragon and our Crew 9 astronauts.
And though our coverage here...
And if you're just joining us, that is it. Crew 9 is officially on their way home. 16 hours, 27 minutes, and some seconds away from that targeted time of splashdown. Now, NASA and SpaceX are getting ready to conclude their live coverage, but that doesn't mean you have to go anywhere. If you are on our Butch and Suni Return to Earth coverage stream or our Crew 9 tracker, you can stay with us. If you're on a stream that says undocking in the title, jump on over, click the helmet icon for our channel, and join us on one of the other streams. They will be staying live, listening in to station-to-ground communications and the latest updates coming in from NASA. We will get those updates a couple times an hour with how things are proceeding with Crew Dragon Freedom and Crew 9 on their journey back home from the International Space Station. It's a live view inside SpaceX Mission Control, and now we're going to transition. And we are now listening in to station-to-ground communications and NASA communications for those updates as we follow along with the final 16 and a half hours of Crew 9. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad. Here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And if you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage. In low Earth orbit tracking or mission update streams like this, we follow all dockings, undockings, and return to Earths from the International Space Station, as well as give you in-space mission trackers and more. You can follow along and get updates on the latest space news at tlpnetwork.com, as well as check out the latest on the launch schedule with our TLP launch calendar. Our community hangs out over on Discord, and you can join us. The link's in the chat, and it's free to join us there. I'm going to hop on over and say hello. I know there's some people in general comms, so we'll jump on over there, say hi, maybe answer a few more questions while we follow the final 16 and a half hours of Crew 9's journey. Again, if you're on the stream that says undocking in its title, this stream is ending, but if you're listening on the Return to Earth coverage or our Crew 9 tracker or the ISS 24/7, these streams will stay live as we follow along as Butch and Suni are finally on their journey home. On behalf of the entire TLP crew, thank you so much for joining us. Stay with us right here as we continue to follow along on Crew 9's journey home back to Earth. Stay with us.
SpaceX Freedom with a question.
Freedom, go ahead.
Yeah, I got handover training from Ann where they deployed their temp sensors on the uphill. I was looking for something in the downhill timeline that would show me when we should deploy those sensors and when we should collect them back up and stow them. Looking for some guidance.
Freedom, perfect timing. We did not have a chance to put this on the crew timeline, so we actually had, we were about to call you guys up and remind you that now would be a great time to deploy those handheld temperature sensors per procedure 2.203 in your tablet PDFs.
Okay, we'll start putting that in work. And then in terms of picking them up and stowing them back, I assume when we come back on duty after the off-duty period, that's a reasonable time to start cleaning it up.
Affirm, Nick. We will have a reminder to tell you guys to stow the handheld temp sensors at the end of your off-duty. And if you're ready, I actually have some information for your off-duty period if you're ready to copy. Tom, tomorrow for the end of your off-duty is looking a bit spotty. We want to make sure that we start deorbit prep on the right foot, so we're going to end off-duty an hour earlier. That will put crew off-duty ending at 1450 Zulu. How copy? And Freedom SpaceX, you came through very quiet.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit louder. 1450 Zulu is end of off-duty.
Affirm. And we got you loud and clear now.
Excellent.
Introducing double chocolate double gooey fudge.
அப்ப கிளீனிங்கும் டபுள்.
காலாவோட 2-in-1 சூப்பர் ஸ்க்ரப் இருக்கே. காலா சூப்பர் ஸ்க்ரப்பில் ஸ்டீல், wool மற்றும் கிரீன் ஸ்க்ரப்பின் இணைந்த செயல்திறன். அதாவது 3 மடங்கு சிறந்த சுத்தம்.
We are coming to you live from Mission Control Houston from the International Space Station Flight Control Room with live mission audio coverage as NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 makes their way through a 17-hour phasing period to eventually splash down off the coast of Florida. Coming up in about 6 minutes, we will have the Depart Burn 2, which will ultimately give Dragon and the crew the boost they need to return home. Right now, we are standing by to receive confirmation of the start of that burn. This burn will last about 44 seconds and will adjust the attitude of the spacecraft about 3 meters per second. Crew 9 undocked from the zenith port or space-facing port of the Harmony module at about 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time earlier this morning. The Crew 9 quartet, NASA astronaut Nick Hague, Suni Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov conducted hundreds of science experiments and technology demonstrations that will benefit humanity back on Earth, as well as in the future as we look forward to exploring further beyond low Earth orbit. While on station, Crew 9 in total saw the arrival of 8 vehicles as well as a departure of 8 vehicles. Those arrival vehicles included 5 resupply missions, 2 commercial crew missions, and 1 Soyuz mission, with NASA astronaut Don Pettit aboard. Crew 9 saw the departure of 5 resupply vehicles as well, and 2 commercial crews and 1 Soyuz mission with Tracy Dyson. The undocking between Dragon Freedom, with the crew on board, and the International Space Station will take Freedom above, behind, and below the orbiting laboratory through a series of maneuvers that are known as departure burns. Freedom will swing below the space station on a trajectory for the deorbit burn, about a 7-minute and 29-second maneuver that is scheduled at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time later this afternoon, March 18th. This burn will ultimately slow Dragon down by more than 50 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for a high-speed re-entry back into Earth's atmosphere and a parachuted assisted landing or splashdown off the coast of Florida. Again, we have that Depart Burn 2 coming up in about 2.5 minutes. About 30 minutes ago, Dragon and the crew exited the approach ellipsoid, a 4 by 2 by 2 kilometer boundary around the space station. That approach ellipsoid exit was the burn that ultimately brought Dragon and the crew outside of that keep-out sphere and will ultimately begin the phasing period for NASA's SpaceX Crew 9. During this phasing period, Dragon, Freedom, and Crew 9 will undergo a series of automatic maneuvers, meaning the crew won't have to do anything, or burns that will prepare Crew 9 for their return back to Earth. And again, NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 is expected to splash down off the coast of Florida at approximately 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time later this afternoon, Tuesday, March 8th.
இவ்ளோ ஹேர் ஃபாலா? ஆகும். ஆகாது. எக்ஸ்கியூஸை விட இத பிடி. புதிய ஹிமாலயா ஆன்டி ஹேர் ஃபால் ஷாம்பூ. இதில் உள்ளது பிரிங்கராஜ் மற்றும் நேச்சுரல் புரோட்டீன் இன் கேர். அது 96% வரை ஹேர் ஃபாலை குறைக்கிறது.
Being bone dry and you guys being
of deployment.
We copy. Thank you.
Imagine a new kind of grilling. Where you watch the heat bring the taste. Introducing Lava Stone for the first time in Chennai. AB's makes the big leap with Lava Legacy. Experience the celebration of barbecue at Absolute Barbecues. Book your table now.
If you are just now joining us, we are live from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at NASA's Johnson Space Center's Mission Control Houston. Right now we are monitoring NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 as they make their way through a 17-hour phasing period to eventually splash down off the coast of Florida later this afternoon. Splashdown is currently set for 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Crew 9 undocked from the International Space Station, the zenith port or space-facing port of the Harmony module, about an hour and a half ago. NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Suni Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov conducted hundreds of science experiments while on the space station. This spaceflight was Suni Williams' third flight. She has a total of 608 days in space, the second most by an American astronaut, surpassing Peggy Whitson, who had 675 dock to the orbiting laboratory at 12